Nnamdi Kanu has been sentenced to life imprisonment. Ladies and gentlemen, he was sentenced on the 20th November 2025 in a federal high court in Abuja by Judge James Omotosho on treason and terrorism counts. For those who may be hearing his name for the first time, Nnamdi Kanu is and was the leader of IPOB, which is Indigenous People of Biafra movement, which is a separatist movement pushing for the independence of Biafra. He wants the Igbos and some other nearby tribes to break away from Nigeria. So, he was arrested by the Nigerian government and tried on treason charges. The trial has ended, ladies and gentlemen, and he's been found guilty. And the prosecutors actually, on this case, wanted the death penalty for him. But the judge thought differently. The judge said he tempered justice with mercy, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, these were some of the words of the judge when he read the verdict. And I quote, "The death penalty is now being frowned upon by the international community. Consequently, in the interest of justice, I hereby sentence the convict to life imprisonment." End of quote. Ladies and gentlemen, it was a sad moment for a man who has been fighting in the last 2 decades against the marginalization and freedom of Biafra. It was a very sorrowful day. The verdict, however, was read on 7 counts, which 4 of them involved life imprisonment, all because he attempted to break Nigeria in 2. Let me give you a few facts about the whole story. Nnamdi Kanu's mission was for the independence of between 11 to 13 states in Nigeria. Pay attention. These states include Abia, Anambra, Ebonyi, Enugu, Imo, Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, Cross River, Rivers State, Delta, Benue, talking about Igede areas, and Koji, talking about Igala areas. Ladies and gentlemen, when you put this in the context of what Biafra could become outside of Nigeria, according to Nnamdi Kanu and the IPOB movement, an independent Biafra nation would have had a population of 61.3 million people and 167,284 square kilometers of lands. I repeat, it would have been 61.3 million people and 167,284 kilometers of lands. This is what it would mean in respect of the country of Nigeria today. It would mean 28.29% of Nigeria's population would have been gone, and 18.11% of Nigeria's total lands would have also been gone. Don't fight me. I'm only the analytic guy. An independent Biafra, if it were successful, would have been bigger than 20 African countries, which would include Tunisia and Sierra Leone and Malawi, ladies and gentlemen. It would have been identical to the following African countries I'm going to mention, all combined. Ladies and gentlemen, pay attention to the names: Seychelles Island, Sao Tome and Principe, Mauritius, Comoros, Cabo Verde, Gambia, Eswatini, Djibouti, Rwanda, Burundi, Equatorial Guinea, and Lesotho, all combined. That's how big it could be. And that was what was the threat the federal government saw coming. And that was what the federal court of Nigeria has sentenced Nnamdi Kanu over. And in terms of resources, that would have been the end of Nigeria's access to oil and gas. Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't a small thing I'm talking about. The following states in Nigeria account for the overwhelming majority of Nigeria's petroleum production. Pay attention: Rivers State, Akwa Ibom, Delta, Bayelsa, Edo, Imo, Abia State, all of which are part of the states described as part of Biafra. That would have been the end of Nigeria's economy as we know it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the very reason why the federal government of Nigeria had to dedicate more time attacking that movement than other movements that are breathing chaos and terror on the country. Yeah, the oil and gas cannot be tampered with. That is what the Nigerian government is trying to say. But lives can be tampered with. But it's not over, ladies and gentlemen. Nnamdi Kanu and his team of lawyers still have the option to appeal in 90 days in court, in the Supreme Court. It is, however, interesting to watch how the Nigerian federal government have been able to stay consistent on this case for the last 10 years in its 2 arrests and trial, but cannot find the same energy to go after the real everyday terrorists of Nigeria. I mean, think about it. Every day in Nigeria, there are people who have devoted their time and resources to killing civilians, mothers, children, kidnapping, and destroying farms, which videos are in circulation all over the place. How is it that those people who want to capture the country to establish their ideology are still walking free men or are sometimes being negotiated with, but a man who also tried to break the country in less brutal fashion is behind bars? Is it because it's easier for the system to put the clamp on him because he is an individual? Or could it be because he is not as ruthless in his approach like the other groups? Ladies and gentlemen, one group wants to capture the country and establish their ideology, and this man wants to break the country in 2. Is it not one in the same thing? Does it not border on the sovereignty of the country altogether? Ladies and gentlemen, he may be sentenced today, but I really don't think this is where the story ends. I foresee an appeal coming and the whole case being reopened in the Supreme Court of Nigeria. But most importantly, I foresee something bigger and more radical rise up out of this situation. Something that has the potential to destabilize the fairly peaceful southern part of Nigeria. Nigeria, Nigeria, Nigeria. Your troubles are many because you are born great. That is an obvious truth. There is not a single great country in the world that's large in size that has had it easy when it comes to uniting the people. That is truth. So I totally understand what's going on in that country. The challenge, however, is this, ladies and gentlemen. In the case of Nigeria, we don't see that one person who has the ability to tie the loose ends. In the case of India, ladies and gentlemen, Sardar Patel is credited for uniting the modern day India after independence. And Mao Zedong is mentioned in the case of China. And so is Abraham Lincoln for the United States when it came close to splitting. Putin is mentioned for modern day Russia. And that's what you need, Nigeria. A unifier who is trusted, but firm, upright, patriotic, but also feared. And it's not what you have today, Nigeria. Nigeria's success, to me, will have a huge impact on all of Africa. And so will its demise. For those who wonder why I spend time talking about Nigeria so much, perhaps you guys have never critically analyzed the makeup of West Africa. Do you know that if things fall apart in Nigeria, their population will easily trump every country in West Africa in a matter of weeks? In weeks. Benin is 14 million. Togo is 9.6 million. Ghana may be 35 million. Ivory Coast is 32.7 million. Nigeria alone is 237 million population. Nigeria's population is almost half of the total population of all West African countries' population combined. Let that sink in. If you don't live in West Africa, maybe you shouldn't be bothered. But if you live in West Africa, especially in Ghana and in Cameroon, you better wish them well, because these are the 2 countries in Africa where Nigerian nationals love to travel to the most. Ladies and gentlemen, let's continue. Nnamdi Kanu is a representation of all the Igbos I know personally. Every one of them is of the view that they aren't part of Nigeria. Some even claim there is a legal document that was signed between the British colonizers and the Biafra state even before Nigeria gained their independence, which I cannot say I have seen. They claim that document was for 100 years, which elapsed some years back. And for that reason, they want their independence. Ladies and gentlemen, I haven't seen any such document, even though it's on the lips of Igbos. But I know one thing for certain. As the population grows across Africa, ladies and gentlemen, if politicians don't get their acts together and create wealth for all the people, especially for the people of the provinces, states, and regions whose resources are being exploited, things like these will become common, not just in Nigeria, but in different parts of Africa. Mark my words. I'm Cyrus, and this is Tuntum Network in Accra, Ghana. Be kind to subscribe if today is your first time with us, and click on the bell for more of my videos. I'll see you in the next one. May the good Lord have mercy on Nigeria. It is bye-bye for now.